Welcome back to Systemize Your Success, where we explore the best strategies for systemization, automation, and productivity to make your business run more smoothly and efficiently. I'm Dr. Steve Day, and today we're going to be delving into a subject or a topic that has totally revolutionized my work and as a knock-on effect, my lifestyle, my wealth, my fulfillment in life. It's one of those key points or key things that I do in my weekly routine that has had one of the biggest transformational effects on every part of my life. What I'm talking about is deep work, a concept you may be familiar with, but if you're anything like me, knowing about the concept and actually implementing it are two different things. Today, I want to talk about how I took an idea that I learned about in a brilliant book, how I realized my strengths and my weaknesses around implementing it, and how I actually figured out a way to make it a habit that has probably had one of the biggest transformational effects on every aspect of my life as a direct result of implementing it in my business. So the question is this: how do entrepreneurs like us who don't have an endless supply of cash, how do we leverage the best apps, virtual assistants, automation tools, and systems to scale our businesses, increase our profits, and have more time to do what we love to do each day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name's Dr. Steve Day, and this is Systemize Your Success. Okay, so let's kick off by defining what deep work is. Now, deep work, as Cal Newport describes it in his book by the same name, is professional work performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that really pushes your cognitive abilities to their limits. Sounds pretty cool, but it is really cool as well. And the idea that if we give our brain time to really get into the meat of problems, we create even better solutions or better and better solutions. I mean, it's quite logical, but we never really, or typically, as business owners, don't give our brains time to do that because we're so distracted or we have so many plates that we're spinning. And this is, I think, one of the most detrimental things to businesses, especially in the early days. And I kick myself for not doing this sooner, not giving my brain time to create solutions to big problems right at the beginning of my journey. Because as business owners, we get paid for solving problems. We get paid the big bucks for solving the big problems. So if we gives our brains the time and the space and the fuel needed in order to attack the biggest challenges that the people in the world face, then we're going to get paid more for doing that. If we solve simple stuff, other people can solve it too. If we solve deep, hard stuff, that makes us stand out, that makes us more unique, that lets us swim in a blue ocean, if you're familiar with the phrase, which means our competition is zero, which means that then we can charge what we want for the things that we have created because no one else has created it yet. Think of it as like a patent or a trademark on your ideas and the things you create. It doesn't have to be an actual product, it can just be a fix to a problem, but if you're the first one to the market, then you can benefit it more. So these are the kind of things that I have benefited from by applying deep work into my business. It's about giving your brain time to create solutions to big problems. That's the best way I think I can describe it. And in this digital age, but also just in the age of running a business in general, like we are so distracted. There are so many things prying for our attention. Whether you've got a family like me and you've got kids, they want my attention, my staff want my attention, social media wants my attention, recording podcasts wants my attention. But all of that actually distracts me from going deep into the big challenges that I solve for my clients. Now, the reason I believe I'm able to charge a premium for our coaching and our training material and for the products and the services and the communities that we have is because I have spent considerable time, I mean like hundreds of hours, thinking about individual problems to try to actually get the most refined, perfect solution to something which other people haven't bothered to take the time to do because it actually is quite difficult to find the time. I genuinely believe it's because of this that my business has been so successful and why I'm able to charge maybe more than other coaches in a very similar industry to me. And so the idea of giving your brain time should hopefully be obvious that there is benefits to it. But often the challenge is actually carving the time out to do it. Now, I've mentioned some of the benefits already, but let me just list some of the other benefits that Cal Newport describes in the book, because I think they're quite interesting to actually look at when you look at it from a wider perspective. So he lists the following. So enhanced strategic planning. So deep work is when you do your strategic planning. If you don't actually allow time for deep work, you will never do proper strategic planning. Like me, for many years, I just sort of like winged it, come up with my quarterly goals literally 5 minutes before my quarterly goal meeting and hope for the best. However, there is a better way to do it, and that's to give yourself time. We also do higher quality work. I mean, that's what I've just been exploring and talking about. Like the fact we can do better stuff if we give ourselves more time to do it. It's pretty obvious. We also increase innovation for exactly the same reason. We improve decision making because it's not just done blasé or just off the back of a cuff. It's like actually focused to think about the big decisions. We don't overthink everything. It's not about analysis paralysis to just like think for everything. But if there's a big decision to be made, like actually recently we just changed our entire IT infrastructure. I spent weeks thinking about that, because it is such a big change, then such a big impact on our operations and potential in for our future going forward. It had to be done right. So big decisions need big time or deep work to be able to actually get them done right or make the right decision, something you don't regret in the future or very soon after. Also, greater efficiency, because if it conversely to what you may think, spending lots of time thinking about something. Another great example, like literally this morning, I've been planning our course plan. So we're just actually rewriting a lot of our course modules as we move into our new learning management system. And I want my staff to record most of the content for me, because that's hugely efficient for me. However, I want it to be done in a professional, standardized way. So we're spending considerable time creating the plan on how to create a course plan for each course. And we have different course categories and have different plans, whatever. But like literally hours and hours spent going back and forth thinking, how should we actually structure the courses rather than actually what's even going to go in them. And this may seem to an outsider, wow, you're spending a lot of time doing this, just get on and record. And that's what I've done in the past. However, if you do it that way, there's no way someone can help you to do it in a standardized and professional way, because you've winged it. And so they're going to wing it in their own way. And then you're going to have this sort of mismatch of stuff. So this work I'm doing now, this deep work, well, yes, it's a period of time spent doing something which isn't necessarily productive, but going forward, we then have a system or a plan that allows other people to create courses for me in the format that I want going forward forever. That is a huge efficiency increase, and it means we don't have to redo the stuff because it's not done right. Again, big efficiency saving. So spending like 10, 15, 20 hours before we record our first video means that we actually probably save many more hours of that over the next 6 to 12 months. So another advantage is competitive advantage. So if we, as I mentioned before, if I alluded to in my intro, is if we are able to spend longer thinking about things in a deeper, meaningful way, we'll probably come up with better solutions than our competitors. That gives us that competitive advantage. And there's also personal benefits. And these are the ones that, for me, the knock-on effects that were surprising for me. To actually think about, just by blocking out time for deep work, I feel less stressed. Just by blocking out time for deep work, I have a massively increased satisfaction in the work that I do and fulfillment in my life. I've also increased my skills. Like I've leveled up by putting dedicated time to focusing on the reading that I do, not just reading, but implementing, by creating strategies around the work that I actually read. All of this happens in my deep work time. I've got a better work-life balance now. I'm able to not work at the weekends because I'm getting stuff done during the week that's meaningful. Therefore, I feel that even if there's a bunch of tasks that haven't been done, I'm okay to take the weekend off with my kids and my wife because I have moved the needle forward, so to speak, in my business journey. And just having that clarity and focus about where we're going. Like I know I've back in mind at the moment, I've got a big load of work on. I know there's a quarterly meeting coming up and I need to actually create a plan for that. And that's starting to stress me out. When I've done that deep work, when I've actually sat down and put that plan in place, I'll actually I have better clarity, I'll have better focus, I'll know what to work on. So I'll know what's in and what's out when it comes to my deep work sessions going forward. And so actually it brings calm to me, but also more clarity and focus. And lastly, creativity. Obviously, if you have more time to think and do stuff specifically on one topic, you have more time to allow your creative juices or whatever to actually flow and actually come up with awesome stuff. So that for me is a compelling summary of why deep work is just basically essential. And if you're not doing it at the moment, this means dedicating blocks of time. So like 4 to 8 hours in a day dedicated to one problem. And I'm going to talk about how I fitted this into my work regime and explain some of the strategies and stuff going forward later in this episode. But just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about big blocks. And you may be right now thinking that, how can I possibly do that? I'm so busy. I'm running around like a blue arse fly. Just basically constantly putting out fires. There's no way I can carve out 4 hours in a day just to sit down and think about one thing. It's not practical. And honestly, I get it, because that's exactly what I felt. But, and here's the big but, and it's sort of got into this or explained this just now, is by putting and dedicating the time to some of the biggest stuff that you're not doing right now because you're too busy, you will make yourself far less busy. And a lot of this is like, some of it comes into like time optimization and about actually really understanding about the difference between important and urgent and non-important work. I'm actually going to get into that in a second, because really being very focused on what you do can actually improve your time. Being efficient about who does it obviously increases your time, and also being very mindful of when you do it can increase the time available. So there are strategies and ways about time optimization to find time, but above and beyond all that is just the fact that once you've actually done this and you see that by putting a dedicated block of time in, you'll actually generate time going forward, that's when you actually start getting motivated to do it. And there's this concept, with business, like being busy is the same as being productive, and it's not. Like, it's so easy for us to convince ourselves that just because we're doing, we're actually really productive and we're doing a lot of stuff that has to be done. When actually often what we're doing is we're dealing with other people's problems. So people have emailed us, they've messaged us. We're dealing with our staff's problems. They've got problems that actually need to be resolved and we need to go into. We're dealing with admin stuff that's below our pay grade as a business owners especially. We're dealing with stuff that actually is not really essential, but we just get distracted by it. We're checking out social media. We're doing whatever it is. And all of that stuff added up becomes that busyness that we feel, when actually what we need to do to provide the highest level of value we can as business owners and thinkers and creators is to get rid of all that, block out some time and start thinking. And that's what this obviously is all about. Now, I mentioned before about important and not urgent, and urgent and important work, or important urgent work. And this is the Eisenhower matrix. You might well have heard of it. And this breaks it up into basically important, urgent, important, not urgent, and then not urgent, important, and not urgent, not important. And what we're talking about here with deep work is the important but not urgent work. This is the kind of stuff that you can put on the back burner. It's not going to cause you a legal ramification. You're not going to get sued. Clients aren't going to stop leaving you left, right, and center. You're not dealing with complaints, you're not paying invoices. You're not doing all this urgent stuff that has to be done to make your business run without going to prison. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the stuff that you put off because, I'll get around to that sometime. Things like strategic planning, like networking, building relationships, personal development, actually even like health and maintaining a healthy lifestyle and well-being can actually fall in my opinion, into deep work. It's actually blocked out, and I'll talk about this in a minute, how I block out my deep work, because prevention is better than cure. So actually putting some work in now to prevent problems going forward, whether that's in business or personal life, is, in my opinion, deep work as well. And in the Eisenhower matrix, he talks about the important, not urgent work being scheduled. And this is a key thing. Deep work only happens if we schedule it. If we try and allow it just to sort of fit in and around all of the busy, non-important stuff that we actually end up doing, or the urgent stuff that's putting out fires and dealing with the people's problems, it always gets pushed to the wayside because it isn't urgent, just by the nature of the work. So therefore, we need to actually be super mindful about when it is that we are planning to do our deep work. So to understand how I broke through that mess of chaos, of putting out fires, of just like literally working. I was working like 12-hour days, 6-7 days a week. I was sat in my office most of that time. I was creating courses. I was doing stuff. I like felt there was no time in the day to even breathe. And I was living in Sweden, so I emigrated to Sweden to a better quality of life. And actually, I found myself in my early stages working probably just as hard as I had been doing in the UK on different things. But I was actually really struggling to break out of that vicious loop. Part of it was actually habit. So I actually got used to working. Part of my identity was working. So we can get into that another time, because I actually needed to change how I qualified myself as a human being, because I had become addicted almost to the work, or that actually was the status that I saw of myself, that when I worked hard, I was being me. Whereas I had to actually break that as well. So that's part of the problem. The second part was actually literally finding the time. And so I'd lived here, I think, for a couple of years before I realised that there's a ski resort about 2.5 hours away from where I live. And it's pretty damn good. It's got about 30 odd runs, 32 runs, I think. Quite a few black runs, red runs. I'm quite a good skier and telemarker, so I wanted something, I needed something a little bit challenging. And I'd lived here and not used it. And then I found that there's a bus that I could get on a Friday morning that would take me to the ski resort and then back. And they got Wi-Fi on the bus, which isn't actually that important in Sweden because we have 5G everywhere. But anyway, and so I booked this, like cancelled my meetings for a day. It was a great day skiing, and I booked it. And just to put into parenthesis, skiing is the thing I love most in the world. I absolutely love it. Maybe not as much as my family, but everything else. And so I booked it and did it. And on the bus on the way there, I did a couple of hours work. And on the bus on the way back, I did a couple of hours work. And I got a full day skiing. And it was the best day ever. I'd meant to be working, and now suddenly I was skiing on skiing slopes and actually getting a load of deep work done on the way there and the way back, away from distraction, away from my computer, just sat on my laptop, like huddled up on a bus and just focusing, getting work done. And actually the internet was in and out, so I just did offline work, which was actually really super productive as well in that case, because it was different type of work that I wasn't able to get distracted. So I actually then put this as this is something I want to do regularly. I didn't do it every weekend. The weather sometimes wasn't great, or it was my wife, maybe she couldn't actually cover for picking up the kids or whatever. And so there was odd occasions that I couldn't. But I think the first year, if I remember correctly, I skied 11 Fridays in the season, which is pretty good going. So that's over 2 weeks, or about 2 weeks of skiing in a typical sort of alpine ski holiday. But I didn't actually, miss a beat with regards to work, with regards to, being productive or whatever. I didn't have to take time off. I didn't have to get flights anywhere. And I'm not saying you shouldn't take time off. I'm just saying that this is something that I created from nothing in the middle of my work without affecting my productivity. And that's that. So what I did, and this is the big thing here, is because the value of that thing for me internally, so going skiing, so exercise, skiing especially, being outdoors, doing something in the mountains, these are literally the highest value things that I have, that even though it meant cancelling client meetings, rescheduling staff meetings, putting off some work, so pushing some goals, a bit further back because I wasn't actually going to be able to get, as much work done, even if I got some work done. I had to do all of those things to make it happen, but I made it happen because it was such a high value to me. Now, the end of the ski season came, and I'd already got my Fridays booked off. There was nothing in my diaries because I wasn't able to do it. And so for the first time ever, running a business, and I've been doing it for 20 years at this point, for the first time ever, I literally had an entire day blocked out with nothing scheduled and no plan to do any work, because in my head, I was planning on being on the slopes. That was the moment I realized I had this opportunity. I could, go back to my old way, let people start booking meetings in, let other people's agendas, other people's problems come and fill my time. Or I could actually keep that as precious time block time for stuff that's highest value to me. So during the summer season or during the spring summer season, I go running a lot. And so I block out, say, half of that time. So it's half a day for running. So when I'm doing long run training, I'll run 3-4 hours sometimes maximum. So I've still got about half a day left. And that half a day then became my deep work session. It was literally blocked out in my diary as deep work because I'd read this book by Cal Newport. And I just focused on the biggest challenge I had in my business right then. Maybe it was actually recording a course. Maybe it was coming up with a solution to a problem which generated a new course. Maybe it was like setting up a website or coming up with a new strategy for something. But like the key thing here is that it was work dedicated to only me. My staff weren't allowed to contact me. My family wasn't allowed to contact me. It was hugely blocked out time. Like nothing got in the way. And for someone with ADHD, as some listeners might know, I've got ADHD, like having that period to hyper focus allows me to actually go into a zone which I can block out the world and do my best work. But it has to be regular. It has to be able to keep on going with it. Because the problem with ADHD is you can get distracted really easily and you get into a problem until it sort of becomes not interesting anymore, and then you drop it. By blocking out this regular deep work, and I increased that the amount of time I blocked out going forward, I was able to keep the momentum that with my hyper focus stages, as they're called, to actually allow me to use my ADHD as a superpower to solve bigger and bigger problems. And I did this by starting with Fridays, like I said, and then I thought, well, if I can do it on a Friday, why don't I do it on a Monday as well? And I blocked out Mondays, and then I started blocking out my mornings. So I get up really early, so I typically go up about 4:30 in the morning. And I go to bed very early as well. By the way, I'm not a martyr for the 5 a.m. club. I'm just stating the fact. I go to bed at 8 and I get up at 4 or 4:30. And so that morning time before anyone else gets up, that's my precious blocked out time. So my deep work now is literally all of Monday, every morning, all of Friday. And the key thing is, well, not the key thing, one of the great things about that blocking out of that time is like all my client-facing work, all my sales calls, all my coaching, all my staff meetings, with a couple of exceptions, like the daily stand-up sort of meetings, that all happens Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So they're quite busy days for me. And so, but it allows me to then basically spend all of Monday, if I need to, focusing on a problem, every morning focusing on a problem, and all of Friday focusing on a problem. However, as I just said, I go running, I go skiing. So in the winter, I don't do Friday's deep work in the same way because I'm going skiing. In the summer, I spend half day on Friday going skiing typically because I'm going running. But sometimes I don't go running on a Friday, I go running on a Monday. Or sometimes I go away for the weekend and I don't do anything on a Monday or a Friday. And sometimes I go out late with my friends and then I don't do anything in the morning sessions. So this schedule of having the deep work sessions around all the times which I am typically need flexibility, it means that my life is so easy to plan as well. I don't get stressed when things change because it's rare that I take a Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday off, unless it's part of a holiday, just as a random. I mean, annoyingly in Sweden they do have some Thursdays off, which really screws up my plan. But except for those few occasions, like typically when you take a day off, you take a Friday off or you take a Monday off, or like I just said, you want to take a morning off, have a lie in. But by having my deep work in these areas, that no one else is effective. So as long as I don't get too hung up on the fact that, I'm not doing any deep work today, and I just accept it as that's okay, it's actually massively reduced the stress of having to reorganize stuff and things basically getting disrupted. Like my core work that I do with my clients and my team, that hardly ever changes now. And so it's so predictable. That's great for my ADHD brain. It's like the same time every week. I don't have to think about it. And again, time optimization, which I'll talk about in another episode, is scheduling is super important for me and I think for a lot of people. But anyway, so back to my point, like having that particular schedule has worked out really well for me. But as I said, I didn't start out like that. I started out with one day and it was really like sort of a half day, because I still was doing some work on the bus, and then it turned into a full day and then 2 full days, and then I did the mornings as well. And that's over time how I've developed a really like strict deep work schedule and why I actually did it in that way. And so before I finish, I just want to probably mention a couple of key learnings that I've had about deep work. And these kind of, when I talk about this with my clients, sometimes they sort of question if they're able to do this for themselves, or if they are like what happens if you get a writer's block, so to speak. Like whether it's like you just your brain's like porridge, like you're fighting through porridge, or you're walking through treacle, and you just can't get motivated. Like you've scheduled this time for deep work, you're trying to, it's like you've got a big problem to solve, but you just sit down and you know what, you just ain't in the mood. And of course that happens to everyone. It happens to me all the time. And so being aware of that and not doing what I probably still do from time to time, but very thankfully far less than I used to, is not sitting there and trying to force it and make it happen. It's a bit like, if you speak to writers, they'll talk about this, like authors, they'll talk about this. Like, it's very hard to force yourself to get into a brain state that you're not in. But there are some things you can do to help it. So Cal Newport talks about a couple of these things, which he talks about routines, rituals. So having a set of rituals to almost like get your brain in the mood. And I have a few, like I have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, typically a cup of tea because coffee sort of overwhelms my brain a bit. So I'm more of a tea drinker, being British as well. That's probably why. And so I have a cup of tea and I sit down. I'll often, not always, do some press-ups or just lift some light weights, just to really get the blood started flowing. I typically in the mornings I don't go for a run or anything like that because I'm just sort of like in work mode. I just want to sit down and do it, but I don't really have anything much more than that. But some people do have much more ritualized behaviors about preparing so they are in the right state of mind. Sometimes I will sit down and do a bit of meditative sort of thinking about focus and breathing, but again, I'll be honest with you, it's more sporadic than it is consistent. But so for me, getting started is the key. For me, I've got to get started. Otherwise, with my ADHD, I get distracted and then the time just flies. So I prefer just to get there and sit down before I go off and start doing the washing or putting the washing on the line or doing the washing up or whatever, which is often what happens if I don't just stick to my routine. So my routine is super simple because I've got ADHD. You may have a different routine that works for you. When you start though, and you're dragging yourself through treacle, as I was saying before, is I don't just fight it anymore. I just go, this ain't working. Get up and go outside. And that is key for me. Like, there is loads of studies about creativity and being outdoors. It doesn't matter if you live in the city or if you live in the countryside. Arguably, countryside is potentially better, but you just need to be around nature. So if you go to a little park where you live, if you live in a city still, like I used to, go and find a park, go and find a river, whatever is near you, and go and just appreciate nature, like away from the four walls of your office. Or, for me, luckily I live in Sweden now, I can go and actually just walk down to the lakes or go in the forest. And typically I go for a run because that's my thing. And so I just put my shoes on, I go for a 45-minute run, I've got a nice little circuit, I come back, have a shower, 1 hour later, I'm sat down. And remember, this is a deep work session, so it's a minimum 4 hours long, in my opinion. Or if you can do, mornings for me is 2 hours and 8 hours on Mondays and Fridays. But what I'm saying is that you've got a long block of time. So taking an hour out to go for a run or a walk is not the end of the day. Like, that's one of the great things about it. Because you schedule enough time, there is enough time to take time out. And even if it's going well and I'm having a good deep work session, I'll still try, and especially if it's a full day, I want to take a break in the middle and go for a run. And then, as I said, it's exercise. It's doing something outside that raises your pulse a little bit. Go for a long walk, whatever your thing is that you do. And so by doing that, we increase the blood flow to our brain, we get inspired by nature, we actually come up with ideas, our subconscious is solving the challenges that we left behind when we halfway through our deep work session. I come back often with better solutions, or actually I'm going on a complete rabbit hole here, what am I doing? And actually take a detour or a shortcut to a solution because I stepped away and took time out. So taking time out often saves far more time than actually just sticking at it and sort of pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And what's the final thing is that I've been asked in the past is like, how do you know what to do on your deep work sessions? And I mentioned it before, is that it's that important, not urgent tasks. And so one of the things I do for my time optimization is I have a list of deep work activities. And then when I start a deep work session, I take one, not anymore. I just do one. It's like that is my prime focus for the day. I'll work on it as long as I feel I'm being productive on it. And sometimes I'll work the entire day on it, or maybe I'll actually finish it. And then I can think about other stuff. This works because I have time scheduled for everything else. So I have admin time scheduled to do my things like, paying bills and whatever. I have communication scheduled for actually dealing with the emails that I have to deal with. I've got things scheduled in such a way that I know that I can ignore the world for 8 hours and nothing bad will happen, because there is time allocated to make sure that bad things don't happen, or if they do happen, they don't happen for very long. So in conclusion, the big take home from me is to understand the benefits of deep work for you, in both in terms of your personal and your professional life. Understanding that by dedicating considerable time to doing your best work, you will be more fulfilled, you will be less stressed, you will make more money, and your clients will love you. How to do this is to block out time. Block out time. If that seems completely undoable right now, fast forward 4 weeks from now in your calendar and look at your calendar and say, like, how many meetings have I actually got booked that I couldn't move a month ahead? If you phone up a client and say, I know we have a regular meeting on a Friday, is there any chance we could do it a different day of the week? You may be surprised. They may say, thanks for asking. I actually wish we did it on a Monday because Friday's my worst day. So they may actually thank you for rescheduling. But nobody will say, no, I cannot reschedule a month from now, because nobody is busy a month from now. You might have scheduled meetings over the week. Move those meetings and create the time needed. Start with half a day, 4-hour block. Do that, take a break in the middle. And then when you get going with this and you see the real benefits and the changes in your life and your personal and professional well-being and success, then you can then hopefully follow my path and actually block out more and more time. And just to be clear, like, when you start in business, you have got a lot of stuff that you do admin-wise until you get an assistant. And then this is why I advocate hiring an assistant as soon as possible. And this is what we help people to do, is to hire an assistant early, to delegate work, to create time to do deep work. That's like the mantra of our foundation program. And so, so block out the time, make it happen, get the success, and then reap the benefits. Pretty much that's it. So all I've got left to do is to say thank you very much for listening to this. If you found this interesting, as always, please leave us a review, leave us some stars, subscribe to the podcast. It would be my big ask, and share it with your friends and colleagues, anyone you think would find this interesting and useful, so we can grow our audience and help more and more people. That's all I ask. And except for that, I'll say goodbye, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Take care.